Today I'm going to be talking to you about the Astronomy Tools action set and how it can level up your astrophotography image processing. If you're a Photoshop user and aren't already using the Astronomy Tools action set, then I can highly recommend downloading it. It is a paid-for action set from prodigitalsoftware.com, but if you just Google Astronomy Tools action set, then you'll be able to find it there. But I will also include a link to it in the description down below. It costs $22, but if you're in the UK like me, then that's about £16. So it's an absolute bargain, and they occasionally run offers on here. So when I bought mine back in spring last year, they actually had a 20% off, so I got it for even less than that. I think it cost about £12 in the end, and it's available for both Mac and Windows. So before we dive into the detail of the video about why everybody that uses Photoshop should be using the Astronomy Tools action set, if you are downloading it for the first time and have never used it before, I'll show you how to get it loaded into Photoshop for you. So once you've bought it and downloaded it, then you're going to want to do a couple of things. You're going to want to load up Photoshop and then go to Window and make sure that the Actions button is ticked there to load up the Actions panel over here. You can actually have this wherever you want in your window, but I have mine I have mine snapped into there. Once you've loaded that, you're going to want to click on these three lines on the right hand side here and then go down to load actions, and from there you just need to locate the file where you saved the action set, click load, and then all of these actions will load into Photoshop for you. So just to demonstrate a few of the actions that you can run for those that haven't yet bought it and are deciding whether or not they want to, I thought I'd just demonstrate a few of the actions for you. So I've got an image of the California Nebula here. It's about 3 hours of data, if I remember rightly. And all I've done so far is I've done some basic curves adjustments and readjusted the levels, and I used the Gradient Exterminator plugin just to keep the background nice and flat. And that's where we are now. So from here, I'm going to demonstrate a few of the action sets. The first one that I'm going to do is some noise reduction. To do this, I'm going to zoom in quite a bit because it's difficult to see this on a video, but the first thing that I'm going to run is the space noise reduction. And if you actually click on these little arrows here, you can see the steps that these action sets are going to run through. So it's important to stress that you could carry out all of this yourself without having to download the action set, but as you can see, just by this one, there's quite a lot of actions that get run, and so I just find it so much easier. I consider myself to be an average user of Photoshop. I know what I'm doing, but equally I like my life to be easy, so I find I use quite a lot of these actions on every single image that I process. And to run one of the actions, all you need to do is click on it and then hit the little play button there. That's going to run. Some of these take a couple of minutes to run, some of them are really quick. This one generally only takes a few seconds to run. Now, I recommend that when you're doing these action sets that you do them in layers, and that's because if something runs and it doesn't sort of quite take your fancy, then you can just delete the layer. And then you won't have lost everything else that you've already done. And then it gives you the ability to turn the layer on and off so that you can see the before and after. So this is the same part of the image that we were looking at a minute ago, with the layer on after the action set has run. If I turn that off, hopefully on the video you can see all of this extra grain that is in the background of the sky, and that's with it back on. So you can see that that's made a huge difference, and I'll give that a name so that I know what we've run, and then we'll create a new layer. And the next one that I'm going to run is the deep space noise reduction. I like to run both. I'm going to do it on a separate layer. I generally would just run this on the same layer, to be honest with you, but just so that you can see the difference of the two. I should also stress at this point it's really important to keep the histogram open just so that you can see that you're not clipping your data. So the deep space noise reduction has run now. I'll give that a name. So if I turn that one on, or off and on rather, you can see again it's just removed some more of that grain. If I zoom back out to the full image and turn it on and off, you don't really see it, but if you're zooming in, then you can really see a difference. And especially if you're going to want to have these printed or anything like that, then these two actions will really help the quality of the image, especially around the sky. The next action that I'm going to run is the make stars smaller action, and with this image in particular, it's not too bad, but I would like the stars to be a little bit smaller. Other targets, you can have quite a lot of stars, and it can just be a little bit overpowering and almost hide the nebula in the background a little bit. Obviously, we want the nebula to be standing out as much as possible. And also, when you do your curves adjustments, your stars can start to bloat if you've been a little bit too aggressive with your curve stretches. So this is something that I like to run. It's only a subtle change, but it does make a difference to the final image. And that one's just going to take a few seconds to run. All right, so that's finished running now. I'll just make that a name so I know what I'm doing. So if I turn that off, you can see what the stars were like before. I think if I just zoom in on this big star here and then turn the layer back on, you can just see that it's just a subtle change, and you can see around all of the stars there that aren't bloated but are quite big and stand out a lot more in the image than I would like to. And you can just see that it's a subtle change just to make them slightly smaller. There is another action that I'll run later which also reduces the stars again, so I'm going to leave that there because they're still a little bit too big for what I would like really. Another one that you can run is less crunchy, more fuzzy. So if you've had to do quite a bit of sharpening on your image and your stars are quite sharp, then that's a good one just to make them a bit fuzzier again. You know, the usual caveat with one of my Photoshop tutorials is that this is all personal preference. It's all down to you and how you like your images to look. I like my stars to be reasonably sharp, but not too sharp, because at the end of the day, that's not realistic considering that they are giant balls of gas that are burning in the sky. So having them pinpoint in an image doesn't really feel realistic to me, but equally, it can look nice when done properly. I haven't sharpened this image, so I'm going to leave it because these stars are actually quite fuzzy anyway. But if you have had to sharpen your image, then that one can save you just to help bring those stars back. Now I'm going to move on to my two favorite actions, because these are the two that are really going to make the nebula pop. Because if I didn't have these action sets, there's not really much more I would be able to do to that other than maybe another sort of couple of small curve adjustments, making sure that I don't wash out the sky too much. But these two actions are absolutely brilliant. The first one is lighten only DSO and dimmer stars. So I'm going to run that. This one takes a little while to run, and it's a bit too aggressive, to be honest. So you will have to check the histogram afterwards, and you'll probably want to turn the opacity of the layer down as well, because you can see now that that's finished at 100%. The sky is just a complete mess now. However, the nebula looks pretty good. So if I turn that back off, that was what it looked like before, and that's what it looks like now. So I really like the detail and the color that the nebula is pulling out. However, the sky is an absolute mess. So before I move on to the next action, we're just going to go up to our levels, and you can see how far the histogram's moved over there. And I adjust my levels per channel because you just get a bit more control, and you don't want to go all the way over to your data because then you will lose some of the nebulosity. So I like to leave a little bit of a gap, especially because you can adjust your levels at the end if necessary. So I'm going to leave that there. So you can see what a massive difference that's now made to the sky again, but it's also kept a nice amount of detail in the nebula. However, I can see that there's quite a bit of noise that's been added to the picture and a bit of gradient across the sky, which I'm not really very happy with. So I'm going to just drop the opacity of the layer down to maybe 50%. And I think that looks pretty good. So I'm going to leave that there for the purposes of this demonstration. As I've said, this is all personal taste. I think that looks okay, but the end result might be a little bit too aggressive, to be honest. The next one that I'm going to run is the enhance DSO and reduce stars. So I mentioned earlier that there'll be another action that reduces the stars, and this is one of them. And reducing the stars really does make the nebula stand out quite a bit more because it just attracts your eye, whereas the stars can be quite distracting when there's so many of them in the picture. So I'm going to go ahead and run that one. There's quite a lot to this one and it takes quite a long time to run, and you will need to keep hitting OK through the various steps that it does, but I leave everything at default and I don't change anything. So I'll pause the video here and come back to you in a second. Okay, so that action has now finished running. Again, that's way too aggressive. I can see some banding across there, which means that the data's been stretched too much. They've got a bit of gradient across the sky again, but the DSO looks even better than before. So if I turn this layer off, that was how it looked before and that's how it looked now. So it's just got a bit of a deeper red color to it, and if you wanted to make that stand out a little bit more, you could adjust the vibrance and the saturation to make that even better color, but I don't like to overdo it, and this video is about the action set anyway, so I'll leave that out for this video. But I'm gonna adjust that down to 50%. I think even that's too much. I think 30% is probably okay. I can still see a bit of banding across there, to be honest. And again, just make sure you keep an eye on your histogram. It doesn't look too bad this time. I'll just bring it across a little bit so that we're not clipping the data but can save the sky. Those two actions are my absolute favorite for making the nebula stand out. They are just brilliant. However, I find that they are really quite aggressive, so the chances of you leaving those on 100% opacity are quite slim, or at least they are for me with my DSLR anyway. It makes the nebula look fantastic, but it then just completely ruins the rest of the image. So just dropping that opacity down can really get the benefit of running the action, but also save your image. So from here, this is kind of normally where I would leave my image, to be honest with you. I would probably just readjust the curves to make sure that the sky looks nice and flat, maybe apply gradient exterminator again. But I just wanted to show a couple of other action sets that people might be interested in. One of them, I know a lot of people suffer from halos around their stars, and there are a couple of actions that you can run for that. Reduce large blue/violet halos. I'll try. I don't normally run these, to be honest with you, but I can see a halo around quite a lot of these stars, so I'm going to run that and see what it does. One thing that you can do is that you can run these actions, and then after it's finished running, you can add it as a layer on top. So if I now hit play on that, everything that just happened on that last action is now in a new layer. So if I zoom in on that, I think that's helped a little bit, but not perfect. But it does look better, so I'm happy. Another one that a lot of people I see on social media use, if you've got a reflector, you'll naturally get diffraction spikes on your stars. However, some people like to add them in after. I'm not a particular fan of diffraction spikes, but I know plenty of people are, so I'll include it in the video for those that do like them. And there are several options that you can select here. I'll just go for star diffraction spikes on the fat stars, and I'll focus in on the big one. All right, so now that that's run, if I zoom in on that star, you can see we've got a diffraction spike on the big star there, and one there. I think that that's an okay look for me. I like I say, I don't really like diffraction spikes, but just having it on a couple of stars, I think looks nice. If I'm just going to create a new layer, and let's have a look at the levels. The levels are okay. I can't really do anything more to that, but I think I could just pull the sky down a little bit and then apply a slight curve to the nebula. There we go. The sky looks a little better. I think I would run gradient exterminator and perhaps crop this a little bit, because you can see that there's a bit of glow there. I don't know if that's from heat from the camera or if that's just another nebula that's sort of popped into the field of view on the side there, but we don't really need it in this image. And so you can see where we've started and where we've ended up. Obviously that is a much better result than it would have been if I hadn't used this action set, and it would have been a lot trickier to achieve the same results without it. So I hope you can appreciate that it can make your life a lot easier with the Astronomy Tools action set. This video is not sponsored in any way. Nobody's paid me to say this, and I'm not affiliated with Astronomy Tools at all, but I thought it was worth making this video. I use these actions on every single image that I process, and for less than 20 quid, it is an absolute bargain and can really take your astrophotography to the next level. So let me know down in the comments below if you want to see more Photoshop tutorials. Don't forget to give the video a thumbs up, and remember to subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell notification so that you're notified every time I upload a video. My name is Nick, and you have been watching Astro Exploring, and I'll see you guys next time.